Time for a reaction video. How did I do?
This is that ugly piece of wood that's been sitting in our firewood pile for over a year.
Isn't that incredible?
No way.
It looks good as new. I'm really excited to try chiseling and see how difficult it is.
Yeah, because remember when we bought our chisels, this is what I was trying to like, and it was super dry and splintery.
Yep.
So, do we get to use chisels today?
Heck yes.
Oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna do a touch-up sharpen on this one because I see just some little nicks in the edge of the blade. I'm excited. I don't know why, but like picking up a hand tool just always feels connected.
Hand tooly.
That sounds really hippie-ish.
Today our goal is to see how far we can get on these timber frame roof braces. Had I been thinking ahead, I would have stopped by our printer to have him print this out so we had hard copies of it, but all I have is a PDF on my phone. This is similar to what we had for our entire timber frame. It's a detail of what every single component is supposed to look like.
Wow. You are such a ham. You should pet its belly. It'd make him really happy.
Are you a timber framing kitty? You heard chisels? Yep.
I think, Jesse can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this will be our largest timber frame project together. The frame was obviously pretty massive, but we had a lot of people helping us with the joinery and the assembly. If you haven't seen that video, give it a watch. It's pretty awesome what, as a group, we were able to accomplish in a week. But this one, we're tackling solo, and there's gonna be quite a bit of work for the both of us.
Basically, we have 6 braces, one in the ridge here, and then one on each side. And then we're gonna have it on the south and the north side of the house.
Some of you might be asking the question that I was asking, isn't this putting cart before the horse? Shouldn't we be working on drying in the structure and the roof instead of these braces? And the answer is actually no. We do have to complete the braces before the sips go up. Basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna assemble the sips on the ground, we're gonna attach the braces, and then we're gonna put the roof on top of the braces.
We have to put the exterior braces on the sips first for 2 reasons. One, when they're all cut, they're going to be pretty heavy and they're going to go pretty high up. So getting them up there would be difficult. But the way the engineer has it drawn, the braces actually will be screwed through the interior face of the sip. And then the ones that go in the ridge will be through bolted through a rafter and through the ridge post.
We have kind of a fun challenge for ourselves. We have experience doing all of this joinery with hand tools, which we're going to do, but we're going to challenge ourselves to speed it up with power tools.
The really exciting tool we're going to be using is in there, but we're not going to show that to you first. Hey buddy. You're so talkative.
The hand tools we'll be using today. We invested in a set of bar chisels for each one of us a little over a year ago. They're the same chisels that Shelter actually recommends, and believe it or not, they're made in Idaho. I'm looking forward to using these, and I know Alyssa is too, but we've got to give them a touch-up sharpen. We'll be using a couple of different squares. One, our combination square. This guy belonged to my dad. And then we'll also be using our framing square. This is the one that I restored over winter that belonged to my grandpa. It's in great condition and we're looking forward to using that one too. The mallet we learned to use in Maine is a 30-ounce urethane mallet. We had a few people at our workshop using kind of, I'll call it a knockoff. That's not really a fair term, but it was a cheaper version of this mallet and several handles actually broke. So we'll be using this one with our chisels. We're going to be using power tools for a lot of our mortising work, but all the finish work is going to be done by hand, and that's where the mallet really starts to come in handy.
Bugaboo, do you prefer larch or fir?
At some point, we'll also be using our stair gauges from Stair. These attach to our framing square to help us to create consistent angles. We don't have a honing strop. Actually, that's not true, we do, but it doesn't belong to us. It's Shelter's, that someone left it here. So I'm just gonna set up our finest grit whetstone with a sharpening station, so as we go throughout the day, we can just touch up everything. This is a combination whetstone that we purchased in Maine. It's a 1000 4000, and we'll probably mostly be just using the 4000 to touch up the blade. This is a Veritas honing guide, which we also got from Shelter, and we have to set the guide to the correct angle to match the bevel on our chisel. And then once that's done, we can actually remove this guide and run the stone or the chisel over the stone to touch up the sharpening. In Maine, the wood that we were chiseling for that frame was white pine. But here at home, we're chiseling Douglas fir, which is substantially harder. So in Maine, we had actually sharpened our chisels to a 25-degree bevel, but that bevel is too shallow and the steel on the edge of the chisel tends to curl up, especially if you hit a knot or you're using the mallet. So we had to resharpen and rehone our chisels down to a 30-degree bevel. So that's the bevel that we'll actually be using today, is 30 degrees, and we'll just keep maintaining that bevel. Alyssa's still powering away on her chisel, but I think she's making good headway.
Half hour later, I got all the way up to the 4,000 grit and there's like a little bevel or something. So I went all the way back down to the 400.
Yep. In the meantime, the LVL for our insulated headers just showed up, and I made a small mistake on my order. Kind of confused me a little bit because they can only order this stuff in even lengths, but they can get it in really long lengths. So we need a 17 and a 9, but you can't get them in a 17 or 9. So we ordered a 26. Good, right? Except I forgot we needed two 26s. So I'll have to call in and order another one. The good news is we're not ready for those yet, so we'll just set them aside for a project in the coming days. We picked up this EPS foam and also plywood. We're going to be using this to build our insulated headers over the garage doors. It's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but the SIP panels are structural, but we're going to be putting obviously garage door hardware in the openings there with the tension spring and all that stuff. And the SIP company and our engineer agreed probably better have something more rigid there than a SIP panel. So we're going to be hopefully doing our own insulated headers, which should be kind of fun. We've never built one of those before. One of the things I think that's going to make this exterior brace project more challenging than I would say, we'll call it normal timber framing, is that when you work on a beam this big, its mass is so substantial that you can bang on it with a mallet and a chisel and run power tools on it and it doesn't move. With these exterior braces, they're about 4 feet long. So if we cut all these things down to 4 feet, they're going to start squirming and wiggling on us, which just makes getting in there with a chisel and really stiff arming a mortise, I think it makes it more challenging. Alyssa had a suggestion, and that would be to try to do the joinery on this guy first because it's already cut to length, and see if it really is that annoying to try to work on these shorter pieces. Of course, obviously we can clamp them down, but for whatever reason it seems like when we clamp them down they still don't hold still very good.
But ain't none of that happening before London fogs.
Is it LF30 already?
LF30 is whenever we want it to be.
True, good point. Time's flying, so I'm guessing based on your preoccupation, I should go make those?
Probably.
Nice, looking good. All right, Alyssa's finally settled on her chisel.
I've settled.
Looks like there's a tiny little spot which she could sharpen ever so slightly better, but for what we're doing today, I think she's going to try to just tough it out. So first things first, we need to get ourselves a nice square cut here, and then we can start doing our baseline measuring along, and then we can work on laying this piece out, mortising it, and then we can draw our conclusions.
Oh boy.
2.5 inches, it says. That's how deep she'll cut. We'll test it out. It's pretty annoying, huh?
Yep.
This is precisely what we're trying to avoid. All right, so we've established that sawing, by hand at least, is wobblier than a son of a gun on these sawhorses. So next, we need to do the layout and then the mortising and see how that goes. This might be worth sharing for some. There is more than one species actually of what we call now Douglas fir. This tree was most likely coastal fir, and you can tell that by the growth rings. These growth rings are absolutely massive.
Yeah, they are.
This stuff grows like weeds over on the Pacific coast in the Cascade Mountain Range, and this is inland fir. You can see the growth ring here is probably comparable to one of those coastal fir rings, but overall the growth rings are far more narrow. And look at these outer rings, quite a bit smaller. And this is larch. This stuff is so insanely dense. Look at the growth rings. This is the same size as that beam that we looked at earlier, and there's probably 3 years of growth for every year on that coastal fir. Larch is a highly desirable burning wood here because of its density, but it's also desirable for structural purposes, although the trees grow so slow that it's really not harvested as much as fir. We just had an uh-oh moment. We were laying out the joinery, and the mortise pocket for the brace seemed oddly large given the dimension of the brace material. Sure enough, we actually brought the wrong brace stock over. We brought 4x6, which is what the braces are inside the house, but this one is designed to be a 6x8, so it has kind of a more beefy, meaty look. So we're gonna just make some quick inventories to see if we even have 6x8 material. Otherwise, we're looking at about another half day of milling. So we have a few floor joists that we actually have stickered. We were going to put these over the dining room and extend the loft space, but we opted at the very last minute not to do that because we wanted to keep the space above the dining room nice and open. We need 24 feet, so we would need 2 of these.
I would argue the chances of us using those and flooring over the kitchen area are slim.
And we can always remake that stock. That's not like irreplaceable.
Right, and we might not need it in years.
Hard to say, and that's one of the things we're trying to do is kind of go through the boneyard and clean up the boneyard so we have a lot less kind of scrap laying around. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the reason this one didn't make the cut was it's under dimension. So that's probably going to be under dimension for the brace stock too.
But if it's only under by 1/4 inch, you're not really going to notice.
True.
Especially if everything's in the center.
True.
So it'll look a little beefier. Or we just go with the 4x6 and have frailer, more frail.
Frailer.
Frailer looking.
Feeble, frail. All things you don't want. Ooh, I want big honking braces on my timber frame.
So when people drive up, they're like, wow, that's beefy.
I think that's the point, is to make it look really, really
Powerful.
Strong.
We don't want our house to look like it's been eating kale for a year straight.
Right. Sold. So we're gonna turn floor joists into exterior wind braces. So the reason this is even important is it tells us whether we can stick to the design that we have or not. If we decided to go with the 4x6 braces, we would have to amend our design.
Oh man.
Looks like we're gonna have to move this one a few times.
It's too long.
It's a really wide mortise.
But it beats hogging them out by hand.
Oh, I have to move it like 3 times. How about that? It's not as loud as I thought it would be. It's pretty quiet.
Yeah, this is a really dry piece of wood.
That's so cool. I don't know if you guys can see in there. I can hardly see in there, but did a pretty good job. Pull the trigger.
And that's how you make holes in wood. Oh yeah. We're about maybe 1/8 over 3.5 deep, which is perfect.
Perfect.
Mortise is a little deeper, not a bad thing. And we kind of figured out a trick where when the chain is plunged fully, you can actually move the head back and forth
To clean it up.
to clean the bottom of the mortise out. Otherwise you end up with kind of like waves of the ocean. The Makita, newer Makita one, chain mortiser has kind of this like pivoting head thing that does the same job. It's more efficient, I'll agree with that, but we're figuring out how to work with the tool that we have, and I would say that's dead sexy.
Wow.
Look at that.
Can't wait to clean that baby up.
Yeah, and I mean, we only have to clean back to that line. So not too bad. A sharp chisel.
That's pretty dang good.
Sharp chisel and a square ought to clean that up. The heel down there is where it really gets difficult because you've got to square that corner down there where the chain's round, but that's a heck of a lot better than digging that out by hand.
Yeah, it is.
Darn it, guys, you missed it. Alyssa's first chain mortiser. The camera was sitting over there patiently waiting for someone to hit start.
As I walked away, I'm like, I should probably check to make sure it's time-lapsing. Nah, it's
Nah, I'm a good camera operator. It'll be fine.
Let's see how it did.
Sorry, guys, you missed it. There it is. 5.5 inches deep. Done with ease. Looks like we need to bring the mortiser back over here and clean up a little bit.
There's a little
in the bottom.
nubbin.
Yep, just one.
This is a
You're
nubbin,
going in, guys. Hold on.
free zone.
Hold on. Think you got it.
Okay.
Way easier than a chisel. Hey, that's looking a lot better. All right, it's time to move to the next step, trying to refine this with the chisel. I think I may have discovered the biggest problem of all is that Alyssa needs leg extensions. Ooh, that looks satisfying.
Oh, that's pretty satisfying.
That looked really satisfying. It's like you finally got an edge. All right, and then I, on the other hand, got a little carried away and my mortises kind of bulge at the bottom down there. I did the typical sin where my chisel actually dives a little bit as I go in and the bottom of the mortise is a little bit wide. Got a lot of practice to do to be better at this stuff. I feel like today's a little slow going. We've had to kind of get a lot of the tools unpackaged, get our head around a strategy, create a plan. And so I think Alyssa and I are both kind of feeling like we wish we could have got more done today. It's been a beautiful day. Temperature's perfect, not too much sun. It's not raining, a little breezy. So we're kind of working through this first one. I think it'll be a good day if we can get this one done. And then kind of talk about what worked, what didn't work. And then tomorrow, maybe we can start on whatever plan we come up with. I'm having fun, are you?
I am.
Oh, good. One of the big changes for Alyssa and I in the last year has been our tools. We've purchased and invested in a tremendous amount of tools. If you look at our channel a little over a year ago, before we went to the shelter workshop, our tool bin was relatively small. Not long after arriving, in fact, I think it was the day after we arrived, we actually purchased an estate, which got us access to a bunch of home building tools, which we've used quite a few of. And throughout the last year, we've invested a tremendous amount in tooling. Why does that matter? One thing that was really problematic for us early on was we would go to start a project and we would get really frustrated because we either had to improvise with a tool that we didn't have, or we had to accept a lower standard of quality. And since we've invested a lot in tools, we feel less apprehensive to start a project. For example, the other day we started a project at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that previously would have resulted in a tremendous amount of tension. We did that project, we got the materials in our truck because we can carry long, large materials easily now, which we couldn't do before we had our new truck. We jumped in the backhoe, did a bunch of digging, put everything together, poured a bunch of concrete, got it all done, went to dinner, and we were in bed by maybe 9 o'clock or so. That's a big change for us. Before, we would often be halfway through a project by sundown, and we were extremely frustrated because we're finishers, and honestly, a lot of it came down to having inadequate tools. So we're happy to be in a place where we feel like we're back in control of the jobs instead of them really dictating our energy, and tools have been a big factor for us there. Alyssa's worried that her Hulk shoulders might have receded slightly since timber frame planing. And she's like, I kind of miss them a little bit.
Really?
Oh, you don't think that at all, huh?
No, I don't miss my Hulk.
Oh, she doesn't miss the Hulk shoulders at all. So the consensus is that working on the small piece wasn't as bad as we originally thought.
It was fine. I didn't even cross my mind once that it was a small piece.
Yeah, with the double clamp on the sawhorses and all that, I think if you orient them well, there's plenty of room to work around them. So, all right. Well, it's a good discovery.
Yeah.
I think the only part that sucks is the cutting because there's so much like back and forth.
I think we decided we're probably going to try to get another hour of work in or so.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to just focus on cutting everything to length.
Yeah, so that's something we can kind of just work on, like head down, start cutting. So we'll cut that guy to length, and then he's ready for the table saw. And then, yeah, we'll work together on cutting everything else down to length. And then we're kind of set to work just on joinery for a couple of days maybe.
Yep.
Well, I don't see your line, so either you nailed it or you cut your line off, one or the other. I just realized something, love. We never told him the story
Oh, we didn't tell the story.
of the Chain Mortiser.
Many of you know when we went to the timber frame workshop at Shelter Institute in Maine, we decided to stay with a former student at his timber frame house that he built himself.
Through that gentleman, we actually met another past student of Shelter who they built their own timber frame, and they were kind enough to give us a tour. I think we shared that on camera.
Yep, we did.
We did that. That was pretty cool. And that timber frame was stunning, and it was built debt-free, I think 25 years ago. And they're still living there. The kids who were once on the back of the wife are now grown-up adults playing video games. And so we got to meet the family and tour the timber frame. But more importantly, back to the chain mortiser, they still had it. They still had the chain mortiser they used to build their timber frame. And they were kind enough to give it to us. So this mortiser is on its second full timber frame. That's pretty special.
And I think that's something that Jesse and I hope to pass along as well when we're done, or potentially lend it out to our numerous friends that want to build their timber frame. So I think that's the great thing about a lot of these tools, is that they can live multiple lifetimes, I guess.
We've tried to invest in quality tools for that exact reason. A lot of Alyssa and I's ideals, we feel like we want to help more people go down a path similar to this, which is part of why we're documenting this whole entire journey. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and the stupid, is so that other people can see what to do and what not to do. But ultimately, we hope more people will start on a journey of their own. We've met many people who are in their own initial phases of that, and we're hoping that soon some of them will start the march and we can join in on their build, and we'll be absolutely excited to use the tools that we've collected and purchased and invested in and been given to help them too. That's the one.
All things considered, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, looks good to me. Oh my God. Ugh. How the heck are these gonna stay on our house?
Right?
My goodness.
Big screws.
Wow. Oh. Alyssa's finding her groove. Oh, there she goes. Woo.
Damn. Wow, that's good.
Oh, can I see? Can I see? Oh,
Don't you
wow.
love when I square things?
Woo. Woof. As your dad would say, oof.
Oof.
I'm in the camera shadow, but it looks good from here. It's heavy, isn't it? That weighs more than you, I guarantee you.
You think?
Yeah, green Doug fir weighs 35 pounds per cubic foot, and that's larch, so I think it's probably as much or higher. Yeah, that weighs more than you. Good work. Is this your collection?
Uh-oh. This one's got a little lean, would it rock, would it?
Oh, yeah, it does. We'll tidy up those ends tomorrow with a slick or a chisel. 1, 2.
Johnny, Jerry, Jamie, Jimmy,
Jonah,
and Jared.
and Jared. Nice. She's naming them now, guys. Oh, geez. What are we going to do? And this one is Jew going to be done tomorrow.
It's gonna be done tomorrow. I like that. That's really good.
All right, let's wrap it up, love. We got to get some din-din, get some sleep, and then we get to play timber framing again tomorrow.
Yeah.
We got to play with a couple of new tools today, and I have to say, I am impressed with this saw. I like the Milwaukee, don't get me wrong, but we wanted to try a left blade, and I think Alyssa would agree with me that it works great. It does use 2 batteries, it's a higher voltage, but the saw just feels good. I doubt, we didn't test it, but that the Milwaukee would just blow through this larch. This wood is hard. Look at those growth rings.
Yeah, wow.
This wood
insane.
is so dense
Wow.
compared to this.
Yeah, look at that. That's
That
crazy.
versus that. That Makita goes through this like a 15 amp corded saw. During the workshop, Alyssa and I focused 99% on using hand tools. In fact, I don't think we got to use a single hand tool, or excuse me, power tool the entire workshop. So using the Chain Mortiser today was really fun. We had a little bit of a learning curve. It's different than the Chain Mortisers we've seen used in the past, so we had to kind of figure out how to use this guy. But there's no doubt about it, this thing makes holes in wood way easier.